Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. While we're still waiting for some other people to join us, please join the Slido link that's being pasted in the chat, or you can go to slido.com and type in WIG 2022 to go through some of our polls that we have on there. Great, people from all around the world. So some ground rules. When you come in, please mute your mic and turn off your videos unless you're a speaker and you have to speak. And please use the Slido to ask questions so that your questions don't get lost in the chat. Thank you again to everyone who's joining us. We'll begin very shortly. Okay. Welcome again, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Building Your Speaker Portfolio webinar hosted by the Women Plus in Geospatial. My name is Esther, development and project management professional working in the geospatial industry in the private sector, and the events lead for Women Plus in Geospatial as well. And joined today, I'm with Sharon Omoja, who's supporting me back end. She'll be handling a lot of all the technical stuff, making sure that she's keeping me straight and narrow and sticking to time for the event as well. Sharon is the Youth Mappers Everywhere She Maps Regional Ambassador and the Women Plus in Geospatial Inspire Portfolio Lead. Sharon, do you want to say hello?
Hi, thank you, Esther. Hello, everyone, and thank you to welcome to our webinar.
Great, thank you, Sharon. For those of us who are not very familiar with Women Plus in Geospatial, I'll just run through a couple of slides before we get into the meat of the day. So Women Plus in Geospatial is a global professional network to promote diversity and gender equality in the geospatial industry and in academia. Our vision is to forge a geospatial community where all genders can thrive. And our mission is to build an inclusive global community, inspiring, uniting, and empowering all women plus in the geospatial sector to become strong leaders and change makers. What started out as a tweet on International Women's Day in 2019 by one of the now co-founders has now grown to be over 3,700 plus women that are members of this wonderful network across 91 countries. And we have about 22,500 followers on social media across LinkedIn and Twitter. And of course, none of all the things that we do today is possible without the W plus G team, our steering community, which includes regional ambassadors, portfolio leads, and the other steering community members who champion our mentorship, our speaker database, our newsletters, and some of the other things I'll speak about very shortly. The network's activities are across these three key areas: to inspire, to unite, and to empower. Under the Inspire portfolio, we have the Women in Geospatial profiles, where we highlight achievements and leadership of Women Plus globally through our social media networks on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We also have our regional ambassadors who organize smaller meetups across the globe, either virtually or physically. And under our Unite portfolio, we have our Slack channel, which is a community safe workspace where our members get to interact and network with each other. We share relevant news, share events and activities, and also share job vacancies. We have the monthly newsletters that goes out every month that highlights our achievements as a community and of each of our members, highlights the events and activities that we go through. We also have the diversity, equality, and inclusion is very dear to our heart as a foundation. And we have a DEI working group that is building our community code of conduct to cater to how aware and how responsible we are for diversity, equity, and inclusion as a community. Under the Empower portfolio, we have our mentorship program, which has seen 3 cohorts, has seen over 250 women plus across 56 countries, and they're currently in the 3rd cohort. Application for the 4th cohort will be resuming after this one has ended sometime in June or July. We have our webinar series that caters to personal and career development, such as one of the ones you're watching today. And we have something we're proud of, which was also launched a few years ago, our speakers database. This speaker database is a database of over 335 women plus in the global geospatial industry. It caters to professionals, and we also call on events and conference organizers to take a look at the database so that we can more increase the diversity and inclusion of women plus speakers at geospatial events in our industry. Before I introduce our wonderful panelists today, I'd like us to also look at the second poll. I know that a lot of us have filled in where we're all coming from. And let's take a look at the second poll. Where would you rank your level of speaker experience? Are you a novice? Do you think you're a beginner? Are you at the intermediate level, or do you think you're really experienced? And at the end of this session, we're going to ask again to find out how much this session would have impacted you. Oh, wow. So someone thinks she's intermediate. All right. Where do others think they fall in? Okay. So a lot of learning to be done for all of us then. Okay, so while that is ongoing, I'll just go back a little and introduce our speakers, and they will come on stage and say a very quick hello so we can dive into our session properly. First up, I have Asimina. Asimina Syriou, who's a chartered geographer of geographic information. Asimina is a business applications and partnerships manager at the European Space Agency, ESA. Mina's current role at ESA involves analysis and assessment of the business and technical aspects associated with operating sustainable space-based applications and services in different thematic areas and vertical sectors, focusing on sustainable development. She's responsible for establishing and developing strategic partnerships with private and public stakeholders in innovative technological domains and markets. She also supports startups, new ventures, and early stage business concepts on space technical related inquiries. Over the past decade, Mina has cultivated her skills as a geospatial and Earth observation specialist, combined with business development, project management, and executive leadership expertise. This has been achieved through a track record of working across non-governmental organizations, academia, startups, the United Nations, and the space sector as her last stop. Mina is a STEM ambassador. She's a fellow and a chartered geographer at the Royal Geographical Society and a mentor of the Women Plus in Geospatial Group. Mina holds a BSc in geography from Harokopio University of Athens and an MSc in geoscience and remote sensing from the University of Edinburgh. She has also studied organizational leadership at Said Business School at the University of Oxford. Mina, do you want to say hello to our guest today?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, all I want to say is I'm very pleased to be here today with you, and I'm looking forward to our session so that we can discuss how we can improve your profiles, how you can spread the word when you go to conferences, become more confident, and build this up as a skill. So yes, welcome to everyone. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you. Our next speaker is Blessing Isaiah. Blessing is an assistant engineer for wastewater with the infrastructure business at Atkins, a construction design consulting firm. She holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master of technology specializing in satellite remote sensing and geoinformatics from the Visvesvaraya Technological University. She is a gold medal awardee for having secured first rank at the university. She is accredited for assistant lectureship by the University Grants Commission in India. She enjoys public speaking and has delivered several technical and non-technical talks at the students' local chapter. She has co-authored technical papers and blogs. She is a representative of a not-for-profit organization advocating for children in poverty. She has co-founded and scaled Zakai, an aromatherapy product company. In her free time, she blogs at the Justice Collective India. She has an extraordinary appetite for reading and likes to be surprised and surprise others as well. And she lives in Bengaluru, India with her family. Hi, Blessing. Nice to have you with us today.
Hi, Esther. Thank you. Thank you for having me here and excited for this lovely panel discussion. Let's see what it holds.
Thank you, Blessing. Up next, we have Rose Waswa. Rose is an environmentalist who is passionate about natural resources. She's a senior remote sensing analyst at the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development and was previously the technical lead in strengthening the capacity of ministries of agriculture in monitoring downstream investments using geoinformation technologies projects. Rose holds a bachelor's in environmental planning and management and is currently pursuing a master's of environmental studies, climate change and sustainability. Her proficiencies include research, design, and implementing methodologies for GIS application in various sectors, such as agriculture, disaster, and habitat assessment. She has over 9 years experience in training and utilizing remote sensing and geographic information system technology in resource trends and analysis with a view to enhance better management and sustainable decision-making. She is well versed in the use of participatory mapping techniques in various spheres with a bias to disaster management as well as resource prediction and flood modeling. She is currently interested in using geospatial technology in solving humanitarian crises with regards to improved quality and quantity production in the agricultural sector, address transportation challenges, and the mapping of market trends. Rose was recently the guest speaker at the Remote Sensing Day 2021 event held virtually in Ghana with the collaboration of African Women in GIS, WEA Geospatial, and Space Generation Advisory Council with the theme Satellite Imagery, the Key to Understanding Our World. She was also a panelist at the Women in STEAM Careers event this year, where the discussion was on the importance of women and representation in general in STEAM fields. Her overall achievement is having a positive shift in improving the standard of living at the household level through informed decision-making by the key stakeholders. Hi, Rose.
Hello.
Say hello to a guest. Hi, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. It's nice to see the fellow panelists. I'm happy to be here.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for being here as well. And our final speaker, certainly not the least, we have Dr. Sarah Taigel, who is the geospatial lead for East Point Geo, a geoscience company in the United Kingdom. She is a geographer with 25 years experience in developing innovative geospatial solutions using GIS, augmented reality, and virtual reality. Over the last decade, Sarah has provided geospatial and geomorphological support across multiple industry sectors, including water environment schemes, where she enjoys working with stakeholders to coordinate improvements. Hi, Dr. Sarah. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying my surname correctly. Very few people manage it, so double thanks. And I'm looking forward to speaking to everyone.
Great, great, great. Thank you. All right, so just before we dive in, we have another poll that's going to be asking you all. Oh, wow. So we have a lot of beginner and intermediates. Great, 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 great stuff. So we have the third poll, which is going to be asking what one thing are we hoping to learn from today's webinar? So if you can share the link to the chat so that people can also start to put in here, and we'll pick from there while we're asking our speakers questions. So back to our speakers. So let's dive in. I think I've done all the talking I'm going to do at this webinar today, and we're here to listen to our speakers. So I'd like to call on Asimina. So we'll start with, tell us about your speaking journey, your experience, how you knew you loved speaking and how you were able to grow yourself in the sector. And then from there, we'll take it through the other speakers and we'll dive into questions.
Sure, that's great. Thanks again. So I have to admit that I did not realize at the beginning that I really liked enjoying, let's say, speaking in public. It was a bit of a challenge. And of course, this happened. I mean, I studied my bachelor's degree back in Athens. I'm Greek, by the way. And then I moved to Edinburgh to do my master's study. So obviously, as you can tell from my accent as well, I'm not an English native speaker. So I was feeling rather uncomfortable when I had to present in public and give speeches or talks or even like do workshops, technical workshops that we used to do back at my master's program. All I have to say is that you don't have to be scared. It's all a matter of practice. Of course, expect to be nervous because even experienced speakers get nervous sometimes. But all we need to do, all of us, including the experienced speakers, is you have to prepare. This is my advice to you. You really need to know what you're going to say and why you want to say it. So all you need to do is practice, rehearse, breathe, try not to make like funny noises, at least try, speak very clearly. And when it comes down to, what is the language you're presenting on, just make sure you have, prepared beforehand. Just probably, I don't know, get your partner, husband, friends, your family, and just like, make this presentation live, just repeat this again and again so that you feel more comfortable. And just always have in mind that, you focus on your audience. Make sure that what you present is simplified. Use body language. It's always good to know that whenever you're presenting your audience, don't have to be bored. You need to use, colorful ways in presenting what you have to say. Visualization aspects need to be taken into consideration as well. So use your face, your body to support your voice speaking, and be comfortable with mistakes because we all make mistakes. I mean, that's not necessarily a problem. So the more you practice, the more you love it, and the more comfortable you become. That's my piece of advice, at least.
Thank you. Sounds interesting. I love the part where you said be comfortable with mistakes. Great. How about you, Blessing? How was your speaking journey like?
So yeah, Esther. So I think I love speaking, and it's been ever since I've born. I think my parents have been telling that I'm the most talkative. But on a serious note, I think it's the most powerful way where we are able to form connections, influence decision making, and kind of motivate change. So I'd say it's been a part of my life since a very young age. So I kind of discovered my passion for speaking when I was 12 years old, when I had to take part in the first Pick and Speak contest, which happened back in my school. So like every other contest, this was something that I always looked after to year after year. Then it just grew on from just not Pick and Speak. Then it went on to debates, then presenting at several webinars and presentation at the college, at the universities. Then I kind of got associated with a couple of local chapters locally in Bangalore. So not just technical talks, and then it went on to other talks as well. So there were a couple of instances where I knew that I like to motivate people, and then I found some satisfaction doing that. So I kind of preach at the youth church. So being a speaker all over my life, uh, I think it is quite a journey. It has been quite a journey, but yeah, of course, there's always things to learn. And this being my very first international webinar, like as Mina rightly pointed, preparation is the key. It's very crucial. No matter how far you get in your journey of speaking, you always got to prepare. And I think take it slowly. We'll reach there someday. Yep.
Thank you, Blessing. How about you, Rose? What was it like for you?
Okay, thank you, Blessing and Mina. I think my story kind of picks on, or just rides on whatever Blessing has said and Mina as well. I also started my speaking journey at a very young age. I remember my very first, I would say audience was the entire church, and it was not a big church. But the best thing about it was that it was huge, and in my innocence, I did not realize that I was excited about holding the microphone. That was the thing for me, but I didn't know the gravity of what that meant, not just for myself, because I got to hold the microphone, but also like the other Sunday school children. In terms of my journey, that was my very first speaking journey that I can recall. I was also very much into debating. I think it's I would say a flaw, or rather a limitation on my end. I don't like losing. So obviously I joined the debating club, and I've always been advocating for both like environmental rights, not just, I'm from the opinion that a tree is as good as I am. We are all coexisting in the same place. Same goes to the animals. So I've always been in the debating scene, and having differing opinions kind of builds you, because you need to speak out what you know, but at the same time, you need to listen. In terms of experience in what it takes to be more or less a good speaker, still communication with your audience is key, because for people to come in to listen to what you want to present to them, or rather what your conversation is about, they need to be interested. And the only way is for you to be able to assess what kind of audience you have. You might have the same content, like, for example, I'm from the geospatial field. So I can have a meeting with some even up to gender level. I can have a meeting with people in the community, or I can have a meeting with policymakers within, say, the Ministry of Agriculture. While I will present the same thing in saying that there are some differences in terms of climate changing and what have you, how I will portray that information to the people at the community level versus the policymakers, the decision makers, is different. So one of the key points is get to know who your audience is, and that is how you'll be able to relay the information best. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. And Dr. Sarah, do you want to just cap that off with your own wealth of experience? How did you come into speaking, and how's the journey been so far?
Well, I think I'm probably the odd one out, because I don't enjoy speaking, and I didn't speak much as a child, and I didn't like getting up in front of people. I come to it from a technical perspective. I started GIS 20-ish years ago, and I had to bridge the gap between people who were using the data and the tools, and the IT people who wanted to be able to support the systems. And that's where I discovered that actually I quite like talking to people and bringing people together in a collaborative environment and talking through problems and making sure that we're all working together, that very much that knowledge sharing. And then when I started doing my research degree, I discovered I quite like talking to the students and making sure that I could run lectures that grew into running and giving conference presentations to larger audiences, and that's really where it's come from. Although I don't work in academia anymore, that's where most of my speaking has come from.
All right, thank you. That's interesting, actually, to think that you didn't like to do it at first, but then being able to, or wanting to explain the technical aspects of what you do to other people kind of helped you find that balance, and also the students' part. All right, great then. So to all our panelists now, the first question would be, how do you grow your speaking portfolio? So whether you started really, really young as a child, so to be able to do it professionally, how do you grow your speaking portfolio to become visible and get invited to speak at events and conferences? Who would want to go? Asimina, I can see you nodding. Do you want to go first? Please go on.
So sorry, why not? No, that's a very good point, because of course you always think, how do I start? So what I did back in the days, because again, like I started working as a TS specialist like more than 10 years ago. So I was like, how exactly am I going to promote myself? Because of course we did have LinkedIn back then, but it was not that active, that popular, let's say. So what I did in the first instance is, like, because I was a bit hands-on with programming a little bit, not anymore, really, mostly on the business side of things these days, I created my own website. So with the help of friends and just like Googling it around, I just like set up my own website on GitHub. I started with Google website, and then on GitHub. So I was kind of like, GitHub, something like that it was called back then. So I just started to creating like a website about myself in order to promote myself and spread the word on what are my capabilities, how people can reach out to me, and things like this. So I always say that creating and maintaining a speaker website, for example, the one that your group is using, it's just fantastic. Of course, we have LinkedIn these days, which is a very popular tool and very useful tool. It's a very good starting point. Now, another thing that we always need to consider is like the personal brand. So a personal brand is kind of like identifying your audience. So when you begin to market yourself as a speaker, the more efficient path to prosperity is, let's say, specificity. So you need to kind of like step back, look at the character traits and your personal values, and say who can really benefit from our knowledge the most. And then you really target, what is your audience, what are the plans you need to make in order to kind of like promote yourself and grow this speaker's portfolio. And focusing specifically on the work that you do. Another thing that you need to do is, of course, search on the internet, find what are the relevant conferences, for example, that you can attend. Make sure that you have the right CV, depending on the audience that you're targeting, whether you need to improve, do any, I don't know, like any trainings in order to improve your profile. Make sure that you speak to the right people so that you do a lot of networking as well. So it's a matter of combining lots of different things in order to grow, let's say, your speakers portfolio, so that they can invite you, of course, to the right events or reach out to them just directly.
Thank you, Mina. Rose, would you want to add to that? I can see you smiling as well.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can I go next?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mina. Great job in doing that, by the way. What I would add is know what your content is, know what you're passionate about. You can only speak about something that you are aware about. And how you gain confidence in speaking about a certain agenda is how much in-depth knowledge you know and how best you can simplify that knowledge in order for your audience to understand. So like you rightfully put it, in terms of selling yourself, there's something that you need at the end. It could be a form of gratification. It could be more opportunities. Speaking is more like an interview, but then there's no limit. Having a conversation, there's no difference between having an entire audience of 100 people or speaking to convince 10 people. It's the same thing. What matters is what content you have. How are you going to, it's more like selling yourself. How are you going to give, what information are you giving, and why should these people care about what you have to say? And what's the decision that they're going to make about it? So it can be in two ways. One is you want an opportunity to showcase your other, say, talent, or you want to bring something to the table. On the other hand, it can be something that you've already done. Say maybe you've developed an application, or you've done some work that you want to be published and what have you, or you want a certain decision to be made based on output of what you have done. And this one I'm speaking from the technical experience that I have. So when you're trying to portray this information, we have the infographics, we have what your presentation, how it's going to look. Okay, so that's the same way the words will come in. So when you're speaking, and especially if you're going to speak and you're allowed to have more of a presentation, have more of pictures and graphics rather than prose, because the moment you have all these prose in your presentation, the moment you have so much words, then you tend to have a shift. And maybe the last thing that I would say in terms of speaking is, when you start speaking, try to shy away from shining the light on you. It gives you some level of confidence when you know that it is you who is influencing the other. It's not the other way around. The other person, the audience is not assessing you. You are the one assessing them. So you get more confident. And also, of course, with a number, the more you do it, the more you practice, the more you get better in time. Okay, thank you.
Can I add something on this, please? Those are very fair comments that Rose just raised here. It's just depending on the audience. I mean, we have lots of different things in mind. Sometimes we present in conferences when we cannot really know, let's say, the audience that we're presenting at. So of course we need to be focused on them and explain, for example, I don't know, technical terms in simple words if necessary. But on the other hand, we need to think of when we're presenting in front of people, when we want to work with them, when we want to create partnerships or collaborations, which is a different type of thing. So before that, for this reason, I would say study your audience, know what is the meaning, what is the message you want to pass on, and do your preparation beforehand as well. It's really a matter of identifying your audience and, getting ready beforehand.
Or Dr. Sarah, do you want to add anything?
I was going to add in terms of confidence, which I think is a big element of the thing that I've had to go outside my comfort zone, and I'm sure others feel similar, is that ultimately remember that your audience is there to listen to you, and actually they've asked for you to talk, they've asked for you to come along, they're interested, they're genuinely interested in hearing what you have to say. It's not as though you've got to persuade them necessarily to listen. So I think that was really what I was going to add to that.
Okay, then. All right. Blessing, I would ask you this because you said you loved speaking and you started speaking from when you were 12. From that experience, from growing up and loving to speak, right? What are some of the challenges you've experienced speaking in the now geospatial industry as a woman plus? Right? How has that been for you? How have you been able to take that passion, that joy, that energy of speaking and being able to translate? And what are some of the challenges you've come across?
Yeah, thank you, Esther. So one of the key things that happens when you kind of enter into any speaking opportunity as such is, for a newbie, it's kind of tough to, first of all, get selected in the speaker portfolio. I just become a speaker. It's actually really tough. So one of the very first challenges that I was kind of facing initially was not knowing where to speak or where to begin in the first place. I know that I want to talk. I know that I want to be a speaker someday out there. I've even tried doing some TED, dropping random emails. So you don't know where you want to begin. So that, I think, was one of the very common challenge that you kind of get to see whether it's your relevant industry or outside your industry. So there are a couple of many opportunities available, whether it's at the regional level or at the national level. So one of the things that I did to overcome this challenge was that I rethought my strategy. Okay, I want to be a good speaker someday, but why not start small? So I began doing it with very small associations or very small clubs where they kind of wanted a speaker when the speaker went missing. So they wanted somebody to fill in. So I kind of used to make use of such opportunities and started raising my hand and saying, yes, I'm there, I can do this. So in order to do that, first of all, you need to identify whether is that your strength. Will you be able to do it? Because any opportunity that you get is something that you don't want to lose because you are just beginning. And so you got to be careful and choosing, is that my strength? And like I said, identify, is that what you really want to do? And then most interesting part is the more you get involved with such clubs or such associations or with such organizations, so I think it will help you to know better of what is expected of you. So thereby you know how to uh, become a speaker in that particular area. And like Rose rightly mentioned, you need to be the expert. So keep learning and push yourself to such topics, and keep it easy, because if you are being tough to work with, I don't think they're going to call you ever again. I still remember this one of this sessions wherein one of the speaker was not being able to work with the event coordinator, and then I was being pulled into that event. So these are very small things, but it kind of pulls off at a big level. So if everything else fails, I'll say do it yourself. So I have been at this phase where I've hosted kind of my own events. I've created some educational videos, and I've hosted and I've tried to invite speakers. However, I think these are the small little things which will help us, but be persistent in seeking out opportunities, because it's really frustrating sometimes when you really want to be there and all your applications are turned down. But I believe that you just do it persistently. I think you can overcome the challenge, no matter whether it's in your field or whether it's outside your field. You will no longer be a newbie after some time. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Blessing. Sarah, for you who started speaking as a more experienced professional, would you say it was different for you being able to get in that space? What were your own challenges?
I think because I've mostly spoken within more of an academic context, it's that you submit a paper per present, you submit a presentation, you go along, you talk about the technical thing, people ask you questions, you answer the questions, and probably the most challenging thing is when somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to. And it's absolutely fine to not know the answer to absolutely everything, even if you're the expert, particularly if somebody is asking the question to not necessarily a genuine question, but where they just want to, kind of ask a question because that's the sense, that's what they want to do. And in fairness, I found the best way to say is please email me at the email address that I've got on the last page of my slide. And as soon as I know that answer, I'll get right back to you. Which, doesn't make you feel bad because you don't have that, you don't have that knowledge to hand. I think for me, joining the speakers database for the Women in Geospatial Plus speakers database led to a podcast, which I'd never done before. I'd never done that kind of podcast interview type thing, which was really fun, but again, outside the comfort zone. And then that's led on to people having heard that podcast. But most of the talking that I've done is around sort of very technical sessions or technical seminars.
Okay, how about you, Mina? What are the challenges from your end in your speaking experience?
My experience is very similar, I would say, to Blessings. I started, for example, during my STEM involvement. So because I was not that comfortable, as I said at the beginning, like speaking in public, I said, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to practice. So I started speaking to schools. So we were organizing kind of like events through the STEM community, and we go to schools like to, students, early career students, and we would explain in very simple words, no technical kind of like, no technical, without no technical background, what space is about, what space applications do, what we can do with space technology. And this is the perfect school for me to kind of like become more comfortable, make sure that, I pass on this technical knowledge that I have, that I've studied, to people that they have no idea what space technology is about, students. And then, of course, this gave me the courage and strength to move on and, get the chance to speak in different types of conferences, or I've been doing like guest lectures on introduction to remote sensing as well. So, adjusting depending on my audience as well. But that was the starting point for myself, the STEM community. And as Sarah very, very, very correctly said, I mean, I believe that everybody has been in this awkward situation where sometimes people just want to raise a question, but because they want to raise the question because it's not really a genuine one, or someone asks you a question in public and you don't really know the answer, which is absolutely fine. So you always need to have in mind what is a diplomatic way, let's say, to respond back and say, this is fine, I don't know the answer. Okay, not exactly like this, but you can email me or I can look into this and just get back to you, which is absolutely fine, absolutely normal. It happens to everyone. We cannot know everything after all.
Yeah.
Sure. Great stuff. I'm sure everybody's taking notes just as I am as well. Okay, so someone asked, well, not asked, but in one of the polls that we filled earlier, someone was asking how to find opportunities to speak. What advice would you have for that person who wants to go? So you're a speaker, you know you want to speak. Where do you look for the opportunities? Where do you put yourself?
I really liked Mina's suggestion about the schools, because schools are often looking for people. That is a really good place to start. And I've done some high school sessions where they're just at the age where they're just choosing their options for GCSEs in the UK. And people say, well, will you come along and talk about geography? Because, I mean, what do geographers do? You know, there's this kind of, well, you know, if you do your geography degree, you can become a teacher. And going along and actually taking along the drone and taking along the bathymetry data and taking along the laptop, which we use, and, you know, all of this kind of inspiring people. And some of those questions that they're asking are genuine. And they can be a good feel for what kind of area do you want to talk more about? What kind of things do you like talking about? As I say, I am primarily technical, but going off to conferences and finding ones which you liked, look at where people who you really like listening to talk. Well, you know, they often publicize them on LinkedIn. So where are they talking? Do they need another guest speaker? Could you offer to fill in? You know, is there anyone you could pair up with? I've done a couple of sessions with somebody else who is a non-technical person, but who uses our services. And we do this is the client and this is the technical, you know, and both sides kind of the story. So linking up with other people as well.
That's very interesting. I think for that one especially, it would actually be a boost of confidence to someone who's just starting out, because you have someone who's like the face of the conversation, and you just come ahead and do your technical bit, which you do every day anyway. Good, great stuff. How about you, Rose? What opportunities would you say one can look out for speaking?
Yeah, not to repeat on the schools, because that has already been said, but there's so many available opportunities online. And what Blessing said in terms of recording your own, you might still go that way as well. Like for you to build your confidence, for you to have you'll still have a view. It doesn't matter. It will be just maybe if you're new to maybe even with social media, YouTube, what have you, you can do your own thing and you can have maybe 5 of your friends will look. You don't know who you'll get attracted. But at the same time, I also appreciate conferences. Not a lot is you know, most people look at conferences in terms of the keynote speakers. However, where the juice of the entire thing is actually within the panelists. And with the panelists, you can also get to asking your question in a good way, not of course just to disrupt the entire conversation, but once you start small you might be interested in a subject matter and this is being discussed, and there's always something that you're not so clear about. And you might have a Google search and everything, but you're not getting the right, like someone with the experience that you would desire to give you the information that you want. So participating in conferences is really good. And these days, conferences with the pandemic, and yes, thank God we have passed that, but the virtual conferences are also quite incredible. And the beauty about it is that for any opportunity that you look for, I go back to my initial sentiments, you must have content, because you cannot be given a platform to speak unless you have some information. And this could be like Dr. Sarah mentioned, you've made a publication, or rather you're looking into making up, you have a small excerpt of what you've been doing and what you might even have not figured out the entire thing. Pitch the idea. Regardless of where you are exactly situated, even within, if you're in the academic field as part of the student or the teaching fraternity, we have discussions that are ongoing. Try and share that. You're already building your confidence and you're building your experience, because you start small, start with 5, 10 people. Before you know it, you are the face of the school or the face of the club or what have you. So that's my comment on that.
Thank you. Asimina, please allow me to circle back to you because you spoke a bit about building a portfolio on GitHub. Someone's asking how do they go about building their own portfolio if they were to go about doing that?
You mean specifically on the website or just generically about the portfolio?
You could talk about both because they were not as specific. But if you were to create your own portfolio to put you out there as a speaker, how would you go about doing that?
By portfolio, I meant anything that has to do about yourself. Meaning, okay, we're talking about a professional context here. So I mean, anything that you that is related to your studies, to your professional experience, to the conferences you have been attending, any speakers' experience, any technical hands-on expertise you might be having, or different languages that you speak and things like this. So this is something that you need to think of how you want to promote yourself and how you want to pass on this message to the people you want to approach, either to invite you at a conference or to a TED talk or to anything, if you know what I mean. So the first thing that I would think is, I mean, the website, at least, it helps myself a lot when I was doing this, because whenever I was approaching someone, either, as I said, to build up a partnership or to do networking, you always have a business card, but you can always say, oh, by the way, this is my website. Or when you're applying for a job, you know, so that people see that you are not just like active in terms of public speaking or, I don't know, like doing XYZ things. It's like, it's a good way to promote yourself. Yes, Sarah, you raised your hand.
You reminded me when you talked about business cards.
Yeah.
I went off to one of the first conferences that I did, and I wasn't speaking, I was just an attendee, and I had a series of business cards printed out, and on the back of them they had a different case study. Each of them had a small photograph of a different case study, and when I was giving them out, people were seeing, I let people select which photo they liked best. It was a bit of an undercurrent theme of researching which landscape people like best. And then I realized that people were actually trying to collect them. So they were going up to other people and saying, oh, look, have you seen, which one did you get? And it really did. I mean, I don't think many of us have done face-to-face conferences for a while, but it made me smile, because I thought that was something which I did quite a long time ago, but it's surprisingly successful.
Yeah, and it's something nice.
Yeah, in terms
innovative.
Of having those conversations. So definitely.
Of course. No, that's a very good idea. Instead of just giving, you know, just like a simple card these days. And actually, these days we don't really use any. I mean, personally, I don't really tend to use like any business cards. I think. No. Yeah, not anymore. And actually, one of the things is like thinking of this portfolio and website that I was describing before, like back in the days. I mean, for example, something else that I included on my website, it was like a short portfolio of the different projects I have been working on, which I think these days, I mean, people might use it in the geospatial sector, but again, it really depends on what you do. Some people in the geospatial sector are more focused on, I don't know, creating web applications, or other people are more related to kind of like business development things. So it really depends on how exactly you want to promote yourself, as I said, and what is the content you need to select and add in this portfolio website you want to create. Then with regards to LinkedIn that I was referring before, of course, I'm an advocate of LinkedIn. Yes, it's very helpful. I don't want to promote like LinkedIn, but whenever you do something that it's important or you want to promote yourself, like spread the word and say, this is what I have been working on, probably just creating a post on social media would be also very helpful to reach out to different audiences, and they find out about what you have been working on, for example. Then what else can I think of? And then when we're referring to the kind of like preparing for speaking engagement, like some of the ladies mentioned this already, like looking up for conferences and that interest you and submit an abstract, it's always a good idea, but always doing this as a team. I don't remember who mentioned that already, because you can always kind of like submit an idea as a team and present it as a group of people. You don't necessarily have to go directly to a key panel discussion or something like that. What else? Then submitting to event listing websites, for example, that is something useful that you could look into it. Or contributing a guest post to the conferences blogs, for example. there are lots of things that you can do. And as Sarah mentioned, I mean, unfortunately nowadays, or with the pandemic, we haven't really had the opportunity to go and have like face-to-face meetings or attend conferences. Everything has been done online. But whenever you go to a conference and just like do networking, even presenting yourself, like getting into a discussion with someone, this is again like presenting and getting this opportunity to practice and learn how to present your ideas and gather interest from the person you're talking to. This is another option that you can think of.
All right, Rose, please go on.
Thank you. Just like you said, when you're speaking, this is for the audience. You don't look at it from the number of people that you're speaking. I think when we talk about, say, an elevator pitch, you need to convince this person at the very first instant. You have more or less 30 seconds to make them interested in what you want to say. So just to throw in there that it's more like you need to be prepared at all times. And the only way you'll do that is if you are passionate about what you want to do. That means you're always ready. You're always ready. I've seen since we are an entire panelist of women, and sometimes we often make this mistake to gravitate back to gender, okay? But at the very least, the same way you would speak to another woman is the same way you'd speak to a man, say, for example. And sometimes we need an understanding and opening up opening up yourself to be more conversant, regardless of who is in front of you. And by that, I mean by gender, by position, authority, or so to speak, even in terms of matters age. You are where you are based on what experience you've gone through and what you've learned based on those experiences, especially at the professional level. And also the last thing is that having a conversation with the same way you would speak, be very open to speaking about who you are as an individual, because you know yourself very well. You can be able to speak on a subject matter. What matters most is your understanding on this particular person. What would they want to hear, and why should they listen to me in the first place? Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Sarah, you raised your hand as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. There were a few things that came to mind. The first was something called the 3-minute thesis, which I don't know if anybody's come across, which is where you are set the challenge to talk about your thesis or your study or your project in 3 minutes. And it's surprisingly difficult, but once you've got that elevator pitch, once you've got that way to describe what you're talking about, you can practice that. You can have that ready to roll, and you can have several of those 3-minute ideas. They don't have to be 3 minutes, but it's just about that. How do you condense so what and who cares into information to give to somebody? The second thing I was going to say is listen. Just as it's important for you to talk, particularly when you're building up your networking groups, just as important to talk as it is to listen. Have a notepad on you, have some way of making a record. Back of your hand doesn't count, I'm afraid, of the interesting people that you've just had a conversation with. It's absolutely fine to go off and get a drink of water and just make a note of who you've just spoken to and what their main area is. So you can then follow them up at the end of the conference, or you can find them on the conference list to actually go back to and open up a second conversation if needed. They'll remember you, you'll remember them. And lastly, on the subject of LinkedIn, there's an awful lot of algorithm behind LinkedIn. And if you're going to use it as a platform on which to base some of your portfolio, it's important, or it's worth following some of the LinkedIn articles and learning how those algorithms can work in your favor. So it's okay to have an opinion. You can go off, you can find other people's posts, you can find other people's articles, you can comment on them. It won't register as an engagement unless it's longer than something like 25 words. Make sure that you use hashtags correctly. Look into the opportunities to use the articles function as well within LinkedIn, which allows you to then write an article, have a lot more information in it. There's some examples on my own public profile, and then you share that article so that you're not limited by words or by images within your main LinkedIn news feed. So I think that kind of thing, if you're going to use LinkedIn, then really delve into how you can make the most of it and attend some of their free training sessions.
I wish we could go on and on. Thank you so much, Sarah. I just looked at the time and saw that we're almost out of time. I wish we could really go on and on. Just before we ask for final tips, someone asked about how do you deal with stage fright or stage tremor? Blessing, do you want to give that a go?
Yeah, sure. So when you are not sure whether you're ready to face an entire group or a large audience, I'd say first you take your idea and maybe take feedback from somebody you trust, and then maybe take one comment at a time, or you just work it out from a very small level to high and start practicing or rehearsing. Maybe I still remember there were days when I used to just turn my phone on and look into myself at the recording later to see what was my body language and how I presented myself and did I make sense. So those are the things that you kind of want to do. And I remember as a high school child going up to the auditorium, standing there on the podium even before the event could start, and assume that the hall is full of people and I'm going to deliver my speech and everybody is listening. So that is a thing or a thought that you can put in your mind and say while you actually practice. And most importantly, I'd say that you got to visualize your conversation first before you kind of talk in front of a group. So without blurting, if you want to deliver your speech, I think you need to kind of visualize what you want to say and go about it in a very slow and progressive manner. You can use these statements like, I think this is what I want to say, and this is why I want to say it. These are the small little things that kind of help you to have a hold of what you are actually doing up there when you're speaking or addressing a large audience, and make sure you kind of make an eye contact with people you speak, because that kind of creates a bond or a trust with the listeners. And within 4 or 5 lines, I think you'll be well connected with the audience and you might not be that fearful. Above all, I just want to say this last thing, that you always have to remember that you are there for a reason. You are there, you are called there because it's not that I know it all mentality, but you know something, it is valued, and that is why you are there. And you do not have to be afraid to say what you know there. And we all make mistakes, so it's okay to make mistakes in front of a crowd and then relearn from it. So I think letting go of that fear, I mean, key to letting go of that fear is to first acknowledge that, yes, I can make a mistake and it's okay. And I'll relearn from it. And always remember that you are there for a reason because you're capable of it. That's why you're there. And with that attitude, I think you might not be that afraid. Like I said, rehearse before you go. And because if you just go and stand before the entire crowd, maybe you get scared. But yeah, you rehearse and I think you'll be there.
Great, Rose. Sounds like you have something to add to that.
Yeah. So just allow me say this. I had an experience when back in primary school. So we were competing in terms of schools and what have you, and we had gotten to the last level of debating where I was the second debater, and for some reason they were taking pictures when you were in the middle of your talking. So I kind of freaked out, and the result is a picture that I think even if I wake up at the first instant, if I'm told to choose which picture it was, I would understand, because, you know, my eyes are open, there's a flashlight and what have you. I wasn't in that comfortable space, yet I had been doing this for a while, and I was more, if you understand debating, you'll understand the second speaker is very important. The first sets the tone, yes, but the second speaker kind of seals the deal, makes the decision. So yeah, that's on a lighter note. But what I understand about stage fright is because of maybe 3 things. Number one, you are not confident about yourself and your delivery. You're not confident about yourself and your delivery, what you have to say. Number two, probably you feel the first one goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome kind of situation. The second is that you are not I wouldn't say well versed in what you're about to talk, but rather you did not prepare enough. So you fear, with the third coming in, like you fear that they're going to find out that you really have not figured everything out. So how do you deal with that? Just going by what Blessing said, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything, but you just need to know something little about, the entire, getting to know one part in detail, and the others you can feel. So the other part is having confidence in terms of what your delivery is, and understanding that it doesn't matter how much of experience you have. At some point during our conversation, you kind of feel that fright building up, but how you react to it matters. There are always mechanisms on how to deal with it. For example, I've heard you say, Blessing, that you look people in the eye. How I approach it is that I look people at the top of their head. So it looks as if I'm looking at you, yes, but I'm actually not looking at you, because you're in a crowd, there are a lot of people. So you kind of are connecting, but you're almost like avoiding, but you still get to say what you have to say. So one of the things that I would advise in terms of dealing with stage fright is adequate preparation, and understanding that should you fluke, you have an opportunity to save yourself. And I'm not from the school of thought of sending in humor, because sometimes it can come out dry. So if it's light and you've used it before, then well, go ahead. But then trying to introduce like a curveball would be a bit difficult at that point of looking. Thank you.
Sarah, you want to add something as well? Your hand is up.
I was just going to add something to the preparation in terms of the kind of practicalities of getting over stage fright. Preparation and what you're going to talk about is important, but also if you're at a conference centre, often at lunchtimes, those the lecture theatres will be empty. And so you can take yourself off and you can go and stand at the front, and you can just get to grips with what it looks like from the bottom. And if you're giving a presentation where you're being asked to use mics or setups or hand-free anything, make sure that if you're not confident, you get the technical person to run through it with you beforehand. I will never forget being put in front of a 300-person auditorium and being told that the hands-free mic wasn't working, but they'd found a headset, which meant that I had to give and I like to walk around stage when I'm talking. And so I had to walk around the entire stage with a wired headset leading back to the laptop. And it didn't really convey the kind of professional technical person perspective that I'd hoped for. So it's quite okay to say these things beforehand, and make sure that you've got batteries in your laser light, or that you've got a backup of your talk on USB. That is also always useful to have. So those are the kind of practicalities around preparation which can just reduce your chances of anything going wrong.
That's a very good point. Learning to adjust in case of any technical difficulties or any other difficulties, or learning to adjust is a key point here, definitely.
Never work with children, animals or computers in my experience. And always have a backup for if you're going to do live demonstrations, always make sure that you have a screenshot backup on a USB to when the internet inevitably goes down.
Great. I really wish we could go on and on and on and on, because I'm sure there are a few other questions that people have, but unfortunately we've gone past the hour. So we'll try to wrap up in the next few minutes. Just before we wrap up, Sharon, please, can you put in the poll about how confident people feel about speaking now? Just put that in the chat and we'll go back to show it later. While that's going on, I want to ask the four of you, what's one thing you want people to leave here today with? What's one thing? So people want to learn how to build their speaking portfolio, to get out there, to get more speaking opportunities, to become more confident in speaking. What's one thing you want to leave them with? Sarah, would you go?
Thank you. Make sure everything that you're presenting to the outside world is up to date. That you have your most interesting things on your profile. That actually the fact that you've got a gold star on your poster when you're in primary school, that's not really important anymore. But just to highlight the things which are most important to you and that you want to talk about.
Okay. All right. Blessing, what about you?
So I'll say that this art of speaking publicly, it's not an easy thing to do. For some people, it just comes within them as a talent. For some, it needs practice. Some needs over time, which is perfect. But I think whatever you are doing, just invest in your preparation. So whatever you are wanting to do, whether a technical talk or a non-technical talk, wherever you want to do, just invest your time, get involved, be focused. If that's what you want to get down the line, gauge your performance, say, keep a tracker and say, okay, I want to speak in 2 events this year, mid of the year, where am I? Have I at least spoken in 1 event? So just gauge where you are. That comes from constant working on it every day. So be persistent, don't give up. And I think it's very important to become a good speaker someday.
Great. Thank you so much, Blessing. Asimina, what would your one thing be?
I would say be confident about the subject you're about to talk about. I would assume that when you're presenting, again, we're talking about the same thing like a conference, you are an expert. So you need to make sure that you devote time to study your subject and get prepared in order to deliver the best presentation possible. But of course, I mean, it happens in a work environment where, I don't know, for example, the line manager just throws you in deep water and says, just go give this presentation, although you're not an expert in the field. It has happened to me, for example. But when you have the option to choose, just make sure that you study the subject as best as you can. And of course, delivering the message according to the audience that you are targeting. Because if the audience is not a technical one, then you need to adjust, of course, your talk and not refer to any technical, difficult words, let's say, or meanings. So yes, it's a combination of things. Study your subject, study your audience, and adjust.
Great. And finally, Rose.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'd go with getting to know you as an individual, your personality, and speaking from that point. Because I think it's very easy for people to get the vibe that you are trying too much. So just being yourself is key to being able to be a good speaker, of course, and being able to look at your audience and adjust accordingly so that you are able to communicate. So be yourself, get to know your audience and adjust accordingly. Just to throw in there, I think the last speaking experience, the preparation was to speak to students who was, for myself, my example, was to speak to students at high school level, and all the content and everything was about high school. Then I come there and I'm meeting people who have law degrees and what have you, and they're thinking of changing careers into STEM and what have you. So that whatever conversation has to shift now and addressing a more, adult, so to speak, adult audience. So yeah, so let your personality speak through your personality. Don't try to copy another person. Be you and be able to read your audience and adjust accordingly.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you spending the hour with us today and joining us. So that's the end of this session. Just to move on, here are some upcoming events we have in the month of May. We have the Mental Muscles and Concept of Inner Saboteurs event. That's online. And for those of you who will be attending the Living Planet Symposium event in Bonn, the Women Plus in Geospatial is going to have a meet and greet and also have a networking session there as well. In June, our mentorship program group, they are going to be having the second edition of the Map the Path, which was where it was some campaign we had last year where we had different professionals talk about their industry, what they do, and then they refer it on to somebody else. And it was a whole campaign on social media. And finally, in July, we'll be having a fireside chat with two of our own members. There's Katie Grillo and Helen Cooper, who will be joining us for the fireside chat. Thank you all so much. And as next steps of what to do today, if you're not a member of Women Plus in Geospatial, here is where you can join us today. You can join to follow us on social media if you just want to, well, say hello from the outside. Join us on social media. And if you want to be like Sarah, who actually got a podcast speaking opportunity, please register yourself on our speaker database so that you can also get your opportunity. You would never know where anybody will call you out from. And on that note, I'll say thank you all so, so much and have a lovely evening or afternoon or morning ahead. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.